The meeting room on the Vexeri space station glowed with blue light. Jane Whitfield stood tall among the Earth diplomats. This was humanity's first real contact with the galactic community. Everyone felt nervous, but Jane kept her face calm. The Vexeri looked like tall, thin people with purple skin and 4 arms. They moved in quick, jerky ways that made the humans uneasy. Their leader, Governor Xal, spoke through a translation device clipped to what seemed to be his collar. "We welcome Earth to the galactic table," said Governor Xal. His voice sounded flat through the machine. "Though we find it unusual that such a young species has achieved space travel." Ambassador William Green smiled and nodded. "We are eager to learn from more advanced civilizations like yours." Jane watched the Vexeri guards along the walls. They held weapons that glowed with bright green energy. She had been briefed about these plasma guns. Supposedly, they could burn through ship hulls. One guard kept staring at her, his large eyes blinking sideways. The talks went on for hours. Jane stood behind the ambassador, alert but bored. The diplomats discussed trade, territory borders, and communication systems. Nothing exciting happened until Ambassador Green mentioned Earth's military. "While we come in peace, Earth does maintain defensive capabilities," Green said. The room temperature seemed to drop. The Vexeri guards shifted their positions. Governor Xal's translator made a static noise before saying, "Defensive capabilities. Please elaborate." Green looked uncomfortable. "Standard protection forces. Nothing that would concern advanced species such as yourselves." One of the Vexeri advisors leaned over and whispered something to Governor Xal. Jane noticed the nervous guard's weapon was now pointed slightly in her direction. "We have reports," Governor Xal said slowly, "that human ships have weapons systems incompatible with galactic peace treaties." Green shook his head. "There must be a misunderstanding. Our ships." A loud argument broke out among the Vexeri. Jane couldn't understand their language, but their body language showed anger and fear. The nervous guard's hands trembled on his weapon. Jane stepped forward. "If I may address this concern." It happened in an instant. The nervous guard panicked and fired. A bolt of green plasma shot across the room directly at Jane's chest. The humans screamed. The Vexeri froze. Time seemed to slow down. The plasma bolt hit Jane square in the chest. Her uniform burned away where it struck. The smell of burned fabric filled the air. Everyone expected her to fall, to scream, to die. Jane didn't even blink. She looked down at the scorched hole in her uniform, then back at the terrified guard. She winked at him. "As I was saying," Jane continued calmly, "I believe there's been a misunderstanding about our weapons systems." The room erupted in chaos. Vexeri guards dropped to defensive positions. Governor Xal backed away, all 4 of his arms raised in a defensive gesture. "What are you?" he demanded. Ambassador Green looked as shocked as the aliens. He had no idea how Jane survived a direct plasma hit. No human should have survived that. Jane simply smiled. "I'm Lieutenant Jane Whitfield, Earth Military Attaché, and I think we should restart this conversation." Word spread quickly through the station. Within hours, representatives from a dozen alien species requested to join the meeting. They all wanted to see the human who took a plasma shot and didn't blink. In her private quarters that night, Jane examined the burn mark on her skin. It hurt, but not as much as it should have. She hadn't expected the enhancement program to work this well. Her superiors would want a full report, but she couldn't help smiling at how quickly humanity's reputation had changed in the galaxy. One shot, one wink, and suddenly humans weren't seen as primitives anymore. They were something else entirely, something perhaps to be feared. 3 days after the plasma incident, Jane sat in a secure room deep inside Earth's military headquarters. 5 serious-looking people in uniforms stared at her from across a metal table. General Frank Daniels, the head of Earth's defense forces, tapped his finger on a tablet. "Lieutenant Whitfield, your incident report is causing quite a stir," he said. "The video of you taking that plasma shot has spread to every corner of the galaxy." Jane shifted in her chair. I didn't expect their surveillance systems to be so thorough, sir. A woman with short gray hair spoke next. That's the least of our concerns. I'm Dr. Susan Miller, head of Project Endurance. She looked tired, with dark circles under her eyes. You weren't supposed to reveal your enhancements, especially not to alien species we barely know. Jane frowned. I didn't exactly plan to get shot, Doctor. General Daniels sighed. The damage is done. Now we need to decide how to handle this. The Vexeri have sent 17 official messages asking about human physiology. 3 other species have canceled scheduled meetings with us. They're afraid. Dr. Miller opened a file and turned a screen toward Jane. It showed a microscopic view of tiny machines swimming in blood. Project Endurance was always classified at the highest level. Only 12 soldiers received the nano-enhancement treatment before the ethics committee shut us down. Jane touched the barely visible scar on her chest, where the plasma had hit. You never fully explained what these things do inside us. They adapt, Miller said simply. The nanites in your bloodstream analyze threats and reconfigure your cellular structure to resist them. Heat, radiation, toxins. Your body can now withstand conditions that would kill ordinary humans. One of the other officers spoke up. The Vexari and their allies don't know if all humans have this ability or just you. We need to decide what to tell them. General Daniels leaned forward. That's why we've promoted you to captain, effective immediately. You're going back up there as our military attaché to the Galactic Council. Jane blinked in surprise. Sir, you've become the face of humanity to these aliens, whether we planned it or not. Some see us as a threat now. Others are curious. We need someone who can handle the attention. Dr. Miller looked worried. There's something else you should know, Captain. The nanites weren't designed to be permanent. They replicate for a while, but eventually break down. Your enhancements will fade over time. Jane felt a cold knot in her stomach. How long? Impossible to say exactly. Months, maybe a year. The other test subjects have shown varying results. General Daniels stood up. Until then, you represent Earth to the galaxy. Some species already want to form alliances with us, thinking all humans share your abilities. Others are discussing preventive measures against us. Jane understood what he wasn't saying. You want me to keep them guessing. Just do your job. Answer questions carefully. Don't confirm or deny anything about other humans having similar abilities. Later that night, Jane stood by her apartment window, looking at the stars. Tomorrow she would return to space as Captain Whitfield. The fate of human-alien relations rested partly on her shoulders. Her phone buzzed. It was a message from Gray Hayes, another soldier from Project Endurance. Heard about your adventure, the message read. My nanites stopped working last week. Started getting normal bruises again. Be careful up there. Jane looked back at the stars. The aliens thought humans were nearly invincible. Soon enough, she would be as vulnerable as any ordinary person again. But the galaxy didn't need to know that yet. She packed her bags, wondering how long she could maintain the illusion of indestructibility that now surrounded humans in the eyes of the galaxy. The Galactic Council chamber was a huge room, with seats for representatives from over 50 different alien species. Jane walked in wearing her new captain's uniform. Many aliens turned to look at her. Some whispered to each other. Others moved away slightly when she passed. The human is here, someone said in a loud voice. Jane kept her face calm as she took her seat at the Earth section. The council meeting would start in 10 minutes. She noticed a group of Vexeri officials huddled together across the room. Looking at her, one of them broke away from the group and approached. Jane recognized him as Governor Saul from the first meeting. Captain Whitfield, he said through his translator. I did not expect to see you again so soon. Jane nodded politely. I have been appointed as Earth's military attaché to the Council. Indeed. Fell's large eyes blinked sideways. Your resilience has caused much discussion. Before Jane could answer, a tall blue alien with tentacles for arms joined them. Is this the famous human? It asked in perfect English. I am Representative Clue of the Mentari Collective. We are most interested in forming closer relations with Earth. Jane shook one of its tentacles carefully. Captain Jane Whitfield. I look forward to discussing potential partnerships. Governor Saul seemed annoyed. The council meeting will begin shortly. We should take our seats. As they moved away, Jane noticed a stern-looking Vexari in a military uniform watching her from the entrance. Unlike the others, he didn't look away when she caught his eye. Instead, he made a gesture that looked like a challenge. The council meeting started with boring reports about trade routes and border disputes. Jane listened carefully, making notes on her tablet. When Earth was mentioned, many representatives turned to look at her. The council chair, a floating orb-like creature, eventually called for statements from new members. Jane stood and walked to the central platform. She could feel all eyes on her. Earth thanks the council for welcoming us into the galactic community, she said clearly. We are eager to learn and contribute to peaceful relations between all species. A harsh voice interrupted from the back. Peaceful? Is that why you hide your true nature? The Vexari military officer Jane had noticed earlier stepped forward. I am Admiral Zrek of the Vexari Defense Force. I propose that Earth must disclose all information about human physiology and military capabilities before full membership is granted. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Jane kept her cool. Earth has provided all required information according to council regulations, she said. Admiral Zrek moved closer. Then perhaps you can explain how a human survives a direct plasma shot that would kill most species. The chamber went silent. Jane knew her answer would be crucial. Different species evolve different abilities, she said carefully. Humans come from a planet with many environmental challenges. Our bodies adapted accordingly. That is not an answer, Zrek said sharply. It is evasion. Jane smiled slightly. Just as I'm sure the Vexari don't share every detail of their biology with the council. This caused a stir. The chair called for order. After the meeting, Jane learned that 7 species had formed a coalition led by Admiral Zrek. They called themselves the Security Alliance and demanded special oversight of human activities in space. Back in her quarters, Jane received a message from Earth Command. Coalition forming against us. At least 3 species have canceled trade talks. Admiral Zrek requesting inspection of Earth defense systems. Proceed with caution. Jane looked out her window at the stunning view of alien ships coming and going from the massive space station. She had been here only 2 weeks, and already lines were being drawn. Some aliens wanted to be friends with the seemingly invulnerable humans. Others wanted to find weaknesses before humans became too powerful. She wondered how long she could keep up the act. Last night, she had discovered a small bruise on her arm that hadn't been there before. The nanites were beginning to fail. 1 month later, Jane visited the small human outpost on Proxima Station. This station orbited a gas giant in a neutral star system. Only 5 humans worked there, maintaining a communication relay for Earth ships. Jane had come to inspect security after reports of strange activity nearby. We're honored to have you visit, Captain, said Alan Reed, the outpost leader. He was a thin man with nervous eyes. Though I'm not sure why someone of your rank is checking on our little operation. Jane looked around the cramped station. Just routine. We've heard rumors about unusual ship movements in this sector. What she didn't say was that Earth Command suspected the station might be targeted by Admiral Zrek's coalition. The Security Alliance had grown to include 12 species now. They had started testing Earth's defenses in subtle ways. Alan showed Jane around the small station. Everything seemed normal until alarms suddenly blared throughout the facility. Warning. Environmental hazard detected. Warning. The computer voice sounded calm despite the urgent message. Alan ran to a control panel. That's impossible. Our shields are at full strength. Jane looked at the readings. Radiation levels are spiking outside the station. Something's generating a radiation field. The 5 crew members gathered in the main room. A woman named Liz pointed at the sensors. Look, 3 ships just appeared on our scanners. They were hiding behind the moon. Jane recognized the ship designs. Vexari and Menturi vessels. They're working together. The radiation outside the station grew stronger. Jane felt a tingling on her skin. Her nanites were activating to protect her. But the normal crew didn't have that advantage. "Everyone get to the central chamber," she ordered. "It has the best shielding." As they moved, the station shook violently. The lights flickered and went out. Emergency lighting came on, bathing everything in red. "They've hit us with something," Alan said, his voice shaking. "Not weapons, but some kind of energy pulse." The computer voice spoke again. "Life support compromised. Oxygen recycling at 50% capacity. Temperature controls failing." Jane helped the crew seal the central chamber. The air was getting colder by the minute. The radiation continued to increase, and now something else was happening. The sensors showed toxic gases being released against the outer hull. "They're testing us," Jane realized. "Testing human tolerance to different threats." Liz looked at Jane with wide eyes. "But why? We're just a communication station." Jane didn't answer. She couldn't tell them they were lab rats in Admiral Zrek's experiment to find human weaknesses. Hours passed. The temperature dropped to near freezing. The radiation levels continued to climb. 2 crew members started showing signs of radiation sickness. Jane felt fine physically, thanks to her nanites, but worry gnawed at her. How long could the others survive? She made a decision. Using emergency power, she sent a tight beam message to the attacking ships. "This is Captain Jane Whitfield. I know you're testing us, Admiral Zrek. If you want to see how humans respond to threats, test me alone." These crew members are non-combat personnel. 10 minutes later, the radiation levels began to drop. The temperature stabilized. A message came through. "Interesting proposal, Captain. We accept." The next day, a Vexari shuttle docked with the station. Admiral Zrek himself stepped through the airlock, accompanied by 4 guards. "Captain Whitfield," he said, his translator making his voice sound flat. "Your offer intrigued me. One human willing to undergo our tests to spare others." Jane stood tall despite her exhaustion. "That's what humans do. We protect our own." Zrek studied her with his large, sideways blinking eyes. "Yet you survived conditions that sickened your companions. Are all humans like you, Captain? Or are you special?" Jane kept her face neutral, though her heart beat faster. The coalition was getting closer to discovering the truth about Project Endurance. "Take me to your ship if you want answers," she said. As she followed Zrek to his shuttle, Jane touched the small bruise on her arm. It had grown larger. Her nanites were failing faster now. Soon she would be as vulnerable as any normal human. And Admiral Zrek was just getting started with his tests. Jane sat in a small room on Admiral Zrek's ship. The walls were metal and gave off a slight hum. She had been there for 3 days. Each day, the Vexari ran different tests on her. They exposed her to heat, cold, unusual gravity, and strange gases. Jane felt sick and tired, but she didn't show it. On the other side of the room, Admiral Zrek watched her through a clear wall. He spoke into a recording device in his language, then switched to the translator. "Your tolerance levels are far beyond normal biological limits, Captain Whitfield," he said. "Yet today you showed signs of distress during the cold exposure test. Interesting." Jane kept her face blank. The nanites in her body were breaking down faster under all these tests. Soon they wouldn't protect her at all. "All species have their limits," she said simply. Zrek tilted his head. "Indeed. My scientists have been analyzing the data from our tests on various human outposts. Most humans show normal biological vulnerabilities, but a few, like you, demonstrate unusual resistance." Jane felt a chill that had nothing to do with the previous test. They were getting too close to the truth. "Perhaps some humans are just stronger than others," she suggested. "Perhaps." Zrek touched a control, and a screen on the wall lit up. It showed images of military files, Earth military files. Jane recognized them immediately. They were documents about Project Endurance. Or perhaps some humans are enhanced, Drek said. Jane tried not to react, but her heart beat faster. Where did you get those files? The Coalition has resources, spies, friends in unexpected places. Drek stepped closer to the clear wall. We know about your Project Endurance, Captain. We know only 12 humans received the nano-enhancements. We know the program was shut down. Jane stood up slowly. Then you know humans aren't the threat you feared. Drek made a sound that might have been a laugh. On the contrary, you are more dangerous than we thought. If humans can create such technology, what prevents you from enhancing your entire population? Before Jane could answer, a Vexeri officer rushed into the room and whispered urgently to Drek. The Admiral's expression changed. It seems we must continue this discussion later, he said. Your Earth Command has noticed your absence. They are demanding your return. He pointed at the screen. But now that we know the truth, the Coalition will take action. Jane was escorted back to the outpost later that day. She immediately sent an encrypted message to Earth. Coalition has discovered Project Endurance. Drek planning action against Earth. Request immediate extraction. The response came quickly. Return to Galactic Council immediately. Earth leadership debating whether to reveal full truth about Project Endurance or maintain strategic ambiguity. On her way back to the Council station, Jane thought about what this meant. Earth could admit that only a few humans had enhancements, showing they weren't a galaxy-wide threat. Or they could let the aliens continue believing all humans were potentially as resilient as she was, using fear to prevent attacks. Neither option seemed good. If Earth admitted the truth, they would lose the only advantage they had. If they continued the deception, they risked a preemptive strike from frightened species. When Jane arrived at the Galactic Council station, she found it in chaos. Representatives argued loudly in the main chamber. On the large screens around the room, images of Earth ships were displayed alongside warning messages. What's happening? Jane asked the human aide. Admiral Drek called an emergency session. The aide explained. He's formally accused Earth of developing biological weapons of mass destruction, referring to enhanced humans like you. Half the council is demanding inspections of all Earth facilities. The other half thinks the Coalition is overreacting. Jane touched the bruise on her arm. It now covered most of her bicep. The nanites were failing rapidly. Soon, she would be ordinary again. But the galaxy didn't know that. And now Earth had to decide. Tell the truth and appear weak, or maintain the lie and risk war. The Galactic Council chamber was packed with representatives from every species. Jane sat at the Earth section, listening to Admiral Drek speak. His voice boomed through the translator as he pointed at images on the big screen. These documents prove that humans have created biological weapons, Drek said. They call it Project Endurance. They have soldiers who cannot be killed by normal means. This breaks our most sacred laws. The council chair, the floating orb-like creature, bobbed slightly. These are serious claims. Earth representative, how do you respond? Jane stood up. She had received strict instructions from Earth Command. Deny everything. Maintain the mystery. Buy time. But as she looked around at the frightened and angry faces, she wondered if that was the right approach. Admiral Drek has misunderstood our research, she began carefully. Project Endurance was medical in nature, designed to help humans survive harsh environments as we explore space. Drek slammed his hand down. Lies. Your own files call it a military program. Before Jane could answer, alarms blared throughout the station. The main screen changed to show several ships firing on each other near the station. Coalition vessels have engaged Earth ships in Sector 4, announced a station officer. The room erupted in chaos. Representatives shouted and pushed toward the exits. The council chair called for order, but no one listened. Jane felt someone grab her arm. She turned to see a human man she didn't recognize. Captain Whitfield, come with me, he said urgently. We need to get you to safety. Who are you? Jane asked as he pulled her toward a side exit. Peter Collins, Earth Science Division. I've been studying alien biology here for 2 years. He looked nervous but determined. The Coalition is making their move. They've started attacking human outposts. We need to warn Earth. They hurried through the station's corridors. Aliens rushed past them in panic. Announcements in multiple languages blared from speakers. Jane and Peter ducked into a small lab. We can't reach the Earth ships, Peter said, checking a computer. The Coalition has blocked all communications from the station. Jane noticed scientific equipment around the lab. What do you do here? Comparative xenobiology, Peter replied while gathering items into a bag. I study how different species adapt to environments. That's how I figured out something interesting about humans. He looked at Jane. Something that might help us now. A loud explosion shook the station. The lights flickered. No time to explain here, Peter said. We need to get to a shuttle. They left the lab and made their way toward the shuttle bay. Twice they had to hide as groups of Coalition security forces ran past. As they neared the bay, 5 Vexuri soldiers appeared in front of them. Halt, one ordered. All humans are being detained by order of Admiral Zrek. Jane stepped forward. I'm Captain Jane Whitfield, Earth representative to the Council. You have no authority to detain us. The lead soldier raised his plasma weapon. Resistance will be met with force. Jane thought quickly. In the past, she might have taken a risk, counting on her nanites to protect her. But now, with her enhancements failing, a plasma shot would probably kill her. Peter suddenly spoke up in the Vexeri language, surprising both Jane and the soldiers. He spoke rapidly, gesturing with his hands. The soldiers looked confused, then worried. One of them lowered his weapon slightly. Is this true? He asked Jane. She had no idea what Peter had said but nodded confidently. Absolutely true. The soldiers conferred quickly, then stepped aside. Go, quickly, before Admiral Zrek returns. As they hurried toward the shuttle bay, Jane whispered, What did you tell them? Peter smiled grimly. I said you were carrying a special human virus that becomes airborne upon a human's death, especially death by plasma weapons. I told them Admiral Zrek knew this but hadn't informed regular troops. Jane stared at him. That's completely false. Yes, but they already fear human biology so much, they believed it. Peter opened the door to the shuttle bay. Sometimes fear can work in our favor. Inside the bay, they found a small shuttle. As Peter prepared it for launch, Jane watched the battle through the viewport. Human ships were heavily outnumbered by Coalition vessels. Even if we reach Earth, she said quietly, we might be too late to prevent war. Jane and Peter flew the small shuttle away from the station. Coalition ships were too busy with the battle to notice them. They set course for the nearest jump point that could take them toward Earth. If we can reach the Arcturus relay, we can send a warning to Earth, Jane said. Peter checked the navigation system. It's 2 days at our best speed. The Coalition fleet will reach Earth before us. Jane looked at the stars outside the viewport. We have to try. As they flew, Peter explained his research. I've been studying how different species adapt to environments. Humans are actually quite special, even without your enhancements. Jane raised an eyebrow. How so? Most intelligent species evolved on worlds with stable, gentle environments. The Vexeri homeworld has no seasons, no natural disasters, barely any temperature variation. Peter showed her data on his tablet. But Earth is extreme. Wild temperature swings, earthquakes, hurricanes, high gravity, intense radiation from your sun. I never thought about it that way, Jane admitted. Humans evolved to survive a planet that would kill most other species, Peter continued. You're naturally tougher than most aliens, even without nanites. Before Jane could respond, the shuttle sensors beeped loudly. A large ship had appeared behind them. Coalition cruiser, Peter said, his voice tight with worry. They'd spotted us. The shuttle shook as the larger ship locked a tractor beam on them. Slowly, they were pulled toward its docking bay. Jane searched for weapons, but the shuttle had none. Any ideas? Peter looked grim. We could try to overload the engines, create an explosion, and kill ourselves in the process. Jane shook her head. There must be another way. The shuttle was pulled into the cruiser's bay. Through the viewport, they saw Vexeri soldiers waiting with weapons ready. Jane recognized the tall figure standing behind them, Admiral Zrek. When the shuttle door opened, Zrek himself stepped forward. Captain Whitfield, did you think escape would be so easy? Jane and Peter were taken to the ship's command center. Large windows showed the stars outside as the cruiser changed course for Earth. Our fleet will reach your planet in 3 days, Zrek told Jane. Earth will surrender its enhancement technology or face destruction. You're making a mistake, Jane said. Starting a war over a technology that isn't even a threat. Zrek gestured to one of his officers, who brought up images on a screen. They showed the small outpost Jane had visited earlier. Coalition ships were testing different weapons on it. We have been thorough in our research, Zrek said. Most humans die easily from our weapons, but a few, like you, show remarkable resistance. He leaned closer to Jane. Though my scientists noticed something odd in the latest readings, your resistance seems to be fading. Jane felt cold inside. He knew. The nanites are temporary, she admitted finally. They break down over time. Mine are almost gone now. Zrek looked surprised. Show me. Jane rolled up her sleeve. The bruise now covered most of her arm, dark purple against her skin. Each bruise shows where the nanites have stopped working. Soon, I'll be just like any other human. Your enhancements are failing. Zrek seemed genuinely confused. Then how did you survive our latest tests? Peter stepped forward. Because humans are naturally resilient. Not invulnerable, but tougher than you think. To prove the point, he took a small knife from his pocket and made a tiny cut on his hand. He showed it to Zrek. Watch. The small wound stopped bleeding almost immediately. Natural human healing, Peter explained. We evolved it on Earth because we needed it. Not as impressive as Captain Whitfield's nanites, but still remarkable by galactic standards. Zrek watched with fascination. So the real threat isn't your technology at all. It's your natural biology. Not a threat, Jane corrected. Just different. Humans survived a harsh world. It made us stronger. Zrek was silent for a long moment. Then he turned to his communications officer. Contact the fleet. I must speak with the coalition leadership immediately. Jane and Peter exchanged hopeful glances. Maybe there was still a chance to stop the attack on Earth. The coalition fleet moved through space toward Earth. Over 50 ships from 12 different alien species flew in formation. Their weapons were ready. Their crews prepared for battle. On the lead ship, Admiral Zrek stood before the Coalition War Council. The leaders of each species watched as he spoke. New information has come to light, Zrek said. I believe we must reconsider our attack on Earth. A Mentari representative waved its tentacles angrily. We agreed. Humans are too dangerous to be allowed into the galactic community. Zrek gestured to Jane and Peter, who stood quietly nearby. I invite you to test these humans yourselves. For the next several hours, the alien leaders subjected Jane and Peter to various tests. They exposed them to different atmospheres, gravity levels, and radiation. They took blood samples and analyzed them. They asked endless questions about Earth. Jane felt exhausted. Her nanites were almost completely gone now. She endured the tests through sheer human determination. Finally, the council gathered again. The data is clear, said a small green alien with 6 eyes. These humans possess no special technology that threatens us. Their bodies are simply adapted to conditions we find extreme. And the enhanced humans? Asked another leader. A failed experiment, Zrek replied. Their enhancements are temporary. and there are only 12 of them. The Mentary representative still looked unhappy, but their natural biology is still concerning. They heal quickly. They tolerate radiation and toxins better than most species. If they can evolve such traits naturally, what will stop them from becoming dominant in the galaxy? Peter stepped forward. May I speak? After a moment, the council allowed it. You fear us because we're different, Peter said. But every species brings unique strengths to the galactic community. The Vexari have amazing eyesight. The Mentari can regrow lost limbs. Humans are adaptable and tough. These differences should bring us together, not drive us apart. The council debated for a long time. Jane could see some were convinced, others still doubtful. Admiral Zrek surprised her by speaking strongly in favor of peace. Finally, the coalition leader announced their decision. We will not attack Earth today. Instead, we will continue to study humans and monitor their activities closely. As the fleet approached Earth, they found the planet's defenses ready. Earth ships formed a defensive line, preparing for battle against the much larger alien force. Admiral Zrek turned to Jane. Your people expect war. We must show them our peaceful intentions. Jane nodded. Let me speak to them. From Zrek's ship, Jane broadcast a message to Earth and the entire fleet. Her face appeared on screens throughout both fleets. This is Captain Jane Whitfield, she began. Many of you know me as the human who didn't blink when shot with plasma. That story spread fear throughout the galaxy. Today, I want to tell you the true story. She explained everything. Project Endurance, the temporary nanites, and most importantly, the natural human resilience that had impressed even Admiral Zrek. Humans aren't invincible, she said. We bleed. We die. But we evolved on a harsh world that made us strong. That strength isn't a weapon. It's a tool we can offer to the galaxy. Today, the Coalition fleet comes in peace, seeking understanding, not war. As she finished speaking, the Coalition ships powered down their weapons. Earth ships did the same. For the first time, representatives from Earth and the Coalition met without fear or suspicion. 6 months later, Jane stood in the new Earth Embassy on the Galactic Council station. Her rank was now Ambassador Whitfield. The bruises from her failing nanites had healed long ago. She was just a normal human now, which she had learned was remarkable enough. On her desk sat a small clear cube containing a broken plasma weapon. A gift from Admiral Zrek, with a note that read, "To the human who didn't blink and taught us all to see clearly." Jane smiled as she picked it up. One misunderstanding had almost led to war. One moment of understanding had led to peace, and humanity had found its place among the stars, not as invincible warriors, but as naturally resilient survivors ready to face whatever the galaxy might bring.